Pop. Hey everybody, how you doing? Happy Sunday. You can tell from the bags in my eyes, and the sound of my voice, and everything else. I've been on tour, and I finally got home last night. I have to drive to San Diego again today, so this is gonna be fun. But I wanted to get back in touch with y'all. So, big week this week. Went into Facebook. Talk to them about a bucket-based CBO and a creative content testing strategy using CBO campaigns with all the restrictions and the layout. And long story short, their auction team couldn't poke a hole in it. They had a couple of notes that they wanted to get into. So we're going to get into all that. We're going to get into this week's homework. And we're just going to cover more CBO stuff. It seems like the number one topic of conversation that everyone wants help with. Dylan, I saw that you commented that maybe you can help out if you hop on here. Maybe we'll do something. But yeah, I mean, it is the number one thing everyone's trying to figure out. So we'll just keep hammering it home, right? Until people hear something 7 to 10 times, they're not going to hear it, right? So we're just going to keep talking about it. And for all you new folks, we'll get into that and kind of keep it simple today because my head hurts, my back hurts. I finally got to sleep at home for like good night's sleep. Saw a puppy. It's good times. So anyway, rock and roll. As I said, don't take it out of here. So first things first, I want to say thank you to everybody that did last week's homework. It was very well received. I was able to give away a bunch of good stuff. If you do any of the homework from any of the weeks, we're rewarding those. Anybody there, you get free copies of the ebooks, half price to the Slack channel, or I got a couple more Facebook merch things. But point is, you do that, and you can send it in to me, and I'll work with you to try to get it up and running. So far, we've a lot of people have taken advantage of the Scrum Doc piece, and the success that they're seeing in days is ridiculous. Like what we're seeing from those folks is stability over their campaigns, the ability to identify business goals, and the ability to get out of the weeds and stop micromanaging Facebook on an intraday basis and start going back to the rest of their business, which is a fundamental shift and level up for so many advertisers. The other piece that I've seen people really take advantage of is the third-party pieces, to the point where now they're saying like, "Hey, these are great, give me more," and I'm working on it. I wish I had more right off the bat, but helping people sign up for that was great. So and those folks got into some stuff, and the Slack's been going great, and I know we're wrapping up towards the end of the month. It's going to be a holiday, so we got another ebook coming out. It'll be more of the sexy tips and tricks, some of the stuff that I posted in the group, as well as some other things, some updated versions of it, and we'll knock that thing out too. And then the following month, we'll go into some creative testing inside of CBO and how to really use CBO campaigns and an aggressive testing model to make Facebook work for all y'all. One of the things too that I found is that so many people are scared of CBO for two reasons. One, it's very different than the way we've been buying, which it really isn't. We'll get to that later. And two, it makes it really easy for people to buy for themselves. So agencies are getting hurt. To which I say, if you are running ads for somebody and you're providing value, and you're not providing value beyond actually running the ads, understand that your job can be replaced by a machine, and that you're missing the point. A lot of the folks I see there try to get as many clients as possible, which means they have to do a shit ton of work. If you want to be really good at this, don't get a shit ton of work. Get a few people who really fucking trust you that can spend a shit ton of money so that you can test and you can make winners succeed more. That's where you win. Personally, I've never worked with more than 3 or 4 brands once I got out of big agency stuff, once I was able to establish myself. And I recommend the same for you. it's so much better to have 3 or 4 people who collectively spend 7 figures than it is to have 10 people all spending $1,000. Now, yes, that's absolutely a different type of conversation, but keep the lights on. But do the best you can so that you become indispensable, and any business owner is proud to tell their friends who you are, and you'll never have to pitch again. You'll be able to charge more, and you'll run bigger budgets. Bottom line, your job isn't to accurately and well spend the money that you're given. Your job is to become so indispensable that they have to give you more money. And as a result, you'll get more business. That's just the way it works. So, anyway, getting the homework for this week is a bit of a remedial piece, but I noticed a lot of y'all are new, so you haven't done it. So we're just going to get into it. It's really, really fucking simple this week. But as a very simple base, because we're talking about CBO, we are going to do a 2-parter. Number 1 is going to be finding your best creative. And number 2 is going to be setting up a creative testing campaign. Now, that sounds pie in the sky, whatever, but we are going to use Facebook reporting and CBO to help you crush tomorrow. That's the simplest bit of homework. And all I need from you to prove that you've done the homework is a link to your best creative or a screenshot saying that this is the best one, and a screenshot of your campaign build just saying, creative test 1, creative test 2, creative test 3. That's it. I don't need to see into your data. I don't need to see into this stuff. I'm not trying to steal anything from you. I just want to see that you're trying to do this. And if you do that, you get any of the ebooks, you get half price in the Slack, or you get anything else that I've got that you want, I'll do it for you. So take a look at that. Maybe I'll also start doing discounts on one-on-ones too. Yeah, fuck it. Let's throw that in there. So half price on Slack, half price on one-on-ones, or any ebook you want. All you have to do is do the homework. So let's get into this week's homework. Number 1, finding your best creative. Now, a lot of people I was just on a call this week, right? Where somebody had maybe 10, 15 ads inside of ad sets, and they're running them all, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, and we're going to onboard with them. And what we're going to do first is go to the ad level and pull a report over lifetime. Last 90 days, something like that, right? And we're just going to basically take that. Now I QA'd it to make sure that all of the ads use the same post ID, which if you're not doing that, you need to do that right away. That's homework from another week, so go back and find that week and send me the homework, and then you get free share. You're taking the ads, okay? And then we're going to take a report by purchases, purchase conversion value, and clicks. Those are the only things I care about. And spend. Sorry, I do care about spend. Those are the only things I care about. So I'm going to pull a report on all of that inside of Facebook, which is right in the up here. When you look at the ads manager, reports. So right about there, it says, campaigns, ad sets, ads. Click on the ads. Make sure you're seeing all the spend from everything. And then over here, hit report button. Make sure that you see in your columns ad name, spend, purchases, purchase conversion value, and clicks. Great. So you export that. And then we're going to make a pivot table, which is a bit tricky, but not that tricky at all. But the first thing we need to do is go into the ad name and get rid of anything that says copy or anything. So all the ads have the same. All of the same ads have the same name, right? So it's like creative one space dash copy. Get rid of this space dash copy, right? Get rid of that. So it all reads the exact same. Then highlight all the data inside of Excel, go up to the insert section that's up there, and insert a pivot table, which is the first option. And you want to do at that point, over down here, a little thing will pop up. And in the columns section, or the one to the left, or the rows section, put in ad name. And then to the right of that, over in the columns section, do spend, purchase conversion value, purchases, and clicks. And all we're really doing is trying to find which ad did you spend the most on that was profitable and had the lowest CPA, right? So if you do that, you're going to find these are your strongest ads. Now you might know them anyway. If you don't know them though, that's a simple way of doing it. When you look at that data, by the way, you can divide purchases by spend, and that'll give you your CPA. And you want the lowest CPA you can. And you can divide purchase conversion value by spend, and that'll give you your ROAS, which is great. You need to know that number two. The other thing is you can do clicks divided by spend, so you can see where your lowest cost per click is. So if you do those three, what you're going to find is which one has the lowest CPA, the highest ROAS, and the cheapest clicks, well, all that stuff. The most important thing is the lowest CPA. Then is highest ROAS, and then cheapest clicks. So find the one that you've got the lowest CPA on that hopefully spent a decent amount of money. That's your best creative. And do that and find 2 or 3 of them. That's step one of the homework. That should take you 15, 20 minutes, tops. Or you can cheat it and just say, I know this one is good. Let's go with this one. If you cheat me, you cheat yourself, and that's fine. I don't care. Next piece is we're going to take that. And we're going to build out a creative testing campaign. So we need 3 audiences, or really you only need 2. A couple audiences for your testing campaign. We're going to go off of 1% lookalikes. Okay? So we're going to take 1% lookalikes of everyone that's made a purchase from me in the last 6 months. We're going to do a 1% lookalike, what's called a value-based lookalike, and you just go into create audience, create lookalike, and we can drop in a link to Blueprint later, but value-based lookalike. And then we're going to do a lookalike of purchasers of the product that you're selling. So this is really important. Some of us sell a lot of products, some of us sell a few products. If you've got a flagship product, then you can make an audience of just the people that bought that product. The best way to do that, in my opinion, is create a custom audience of the people that have bought that single product and make a lookalike of it. And you can do that in plenty of different ways. The easiest way I see is by product ID from your Shopify, but that's neither here nor there right now for this homework, because you don't need to do that. You can get away with just the first 2. So anyway, now you've got 2 lookalikes, 1%, and you've got your best creatives, right? Your 3 or 4 best creatives. Inside of your ad set builds, you're going to include both lookalikes, and you're going to exclude your site traffic for the last 7 days or 14 days, whatever you're retargeting, as well as anybody that's purchased from you before. Because you want to exclude retargeting and you want to exclude your retention. Simple enough. So in addition to that, now you're going to take each creative and make it its own ad set. So creative number 1 is an ad set against those 2 lookalikes, excluding the retargeting and the retention. Creative number 2, creative number 3. So you have 3 creatives, both going against, or all of them going against 2 1% lookalikes, excluding retargeting and retention. Now you have a creative testing campaign where you're going to be testing those creatives. Now, hopefully, those creatives will reflect a different type of concept in creative. But that's not important right now. We'll get to that later. But if you just show that, that's great. Now, the way to do that properly So make it a CBO campaign. And what you're going to do is you're going to give all the ad sets the same treatment. In between the audience and budget section in your ad set, even when you're using CBO, you can add spend limits. So I give a min and a max. So I will set, say I have $100 I can spend on testing, and I want to test 5 pieces of creative or 4 pieces of creative. Let's do it that way. I'll set those, let's say it's 5. I'll set it to $20 minimum a piece. Now, what I'll do beyond that is I'll set my campaign maximum to 50% more than that. So I'll go from 20 to 30, right? So my minimum will be 20, my maximum will be 30. And then I'll go to my campaign budget level and I'll set my campaign budget to 20% more than the sum of my minimum spend. So in this case, I've got 5 at $20 minimum. So I'll set my campaign budget to 120. What this is doing is this is forcing Facebook, and the way you used to set ad set budgets, it's forcing it to spend $20 in each place. But you're saying it also has the option of spending an additional $20 wherever it sees fit, but no more than $10 extra in any one of those ad sets. Because you're telling it to spend 20, max it can spend is 30. And you're giving it 20% more. You're giving it basically $20 to spend however they want. Now if it's $1,000, then you're just giving it $200 more, right? Because it's 20% more. Point is, set that up. And again, all I need from you all is a screenshot of the creative, or that you pulled a report, something along those lines, and then a screenshot of their campaign build. Just saying, hey, this is creative 1, creative 2, creative 3, ready to go. If you do that, give you half off a one-on-one, half off on the Slack channel, or any of the ebooks. Really, really simple stuff. Hopefully, really easy for you to do. And the purpose of this homework is that if you do that, you'll be fundamentally better in Facebook tomorrow, because you will be testing creatives. Now, we had a live like a month or so ago, which really got into the deeper dive of all that stuff. But that's the very bare bones level of it. So you can get started now. And it's really, really simple. I know a lot of that seemed complex, but try to do it. And if you run into any roadblocks, message me and I'll carry you through the rest of the way. Simple enough. I do it every week. And we're going to get it done together, right? I want you to succeed. And I'm sure that you want to succeed. So let me know what I can do to help you get there. Simple enough. All right. So I think really we need to spend a lot of time today is just deep diving directly into the CBO, because there's so many questions and I've got a slew of them here. So we're just going to start to get into some of that. So first thing, CBO is campaign budget optimization, which means that we used to set the budget, the ad set level, and Facebook would spend all that budget every day against that audience or that ad set. Now what we do is we tell Facebook, here's a campaign of a bunch of ad sets, and here's a budget that you can spend however you want amongst all those ad sets. Now, the majority of what I see is that people either set, they set that up and maybe they've got 2 or they've got 10 ad sets. Sometimes they're using minimums or sometimes they're using maximums. And they're really just trying to plow through stuff. A lot of times what I see there too is they're running with 5 or 10 creative in every one of those ad sets. And if any of those creative don't get lucky right away, they turn them off. And then the ad set dies because a lot of the times the ad set's running on creative that got lucky early but isn't good enough to scale, because you didn't do creative testing, so you don't know where you can really throw your weight to scale the account. And they see good results right away, and then it goes poorly after a few days, and then they turn it all off and they say CBO doesn't work. This is horrible. How can I get back to the other thing? And Facebook's stealing my money. What I can say is real about that statement that I hear from most people is that CBO for them is very unstable. Now, why is it really unstable? It's unstable because that campaign is seeing many different types of creative. So it doesn't know how to share that learning from, a product shot to a testimonial to, a buy now image, right? Those are very different sales pitches to very different clients. And when you spread that and maybe 10 others among 5 or 10 different audiences, you see it's very, very difficult for Facebook to understand, okay, you've got a bunch of different sales pitches. They're trying to target to millions of people with very little spend, relatively speaking, to each one, which means that as a salesperson, Facebook has almost no data to go on with an extraordinarily large pool of people to reach that have very low quality. And if it doesn't hit a home run day one, you're killing it. And if you start killing everything, if you take out all the failures by the end of the week, all that's left is the stuff that probably didn't spend enough to fail yet, or things that got lucky. So how do we combat this? Number one, each campaign should be built around a creative concept. Make sure that all of the creative inside of that campaign has the same sales pitch, says the same thing, is reflected in the same way. Now maybe it's a video and it's cut 2 or 3 different ways. Or they're all product shots of the same product and they're really close. Or they're all testimonials from clients or from customers that all say kind of the same thing. That way, that campaign is trying to make a sales pitch. Like if you want to go into a car dealership, I just got a car yesterday or 2 days ago. If you go into a car dealership and that car dealership has 400 completely different cars and you come in there, like for them to be able to sell you the right car is extraordinarily impossible. Because if you can't answer any questions, if they just see you and say, hey, do you want this Hummer? No. And then you go away. And then you come in again and say, hey, do you want this Corolla? No. And then you go away. And then somebody comes in like, hey, do you want this Civic? And this person says, yeah, I'll take the Civic. Then that person got lucky. You would have turned off the other ads, right? What I'm saying is, if you're only a Civic dealership, then when people walk in, it's going to be really easy for you to sell them that Civic, right? So much in the same way, I see it with shoe companies, for instance. So put all your shoes inside of that ad set. Put all of, that trainer inside of that ad set, right? Or whatever your products are, so that campaign is built around a single offer, a single product, a single type of creative. Which is why, if you go back to do the homework, when you're seeing all those different creatives, the one that wins, you build a campaign around the winner. Don't throw all of your creative at it because that's going to fail right away. Because there's no way for Facebook to link all of that data together to try to succeed unless you spend a shit ton of money and you weed out all of the losers. And when you weed out losers, if the ad doesn't spend 5 to 10 times, minimum, 5 to 10 times your target cost per sale, then it hasn't even had a chance yet. So if you've got 5 or 10 creatives and 5 or 10 ad sets in a campaign, you might need to spend 50 to 100 times your target CPA before you even know whether or not it works. Most of the time you've done something wrong or the creative doesn't work or whatever reason. In just trying to find the winners, you will spend hundreds or thousands of dollars. You won't see it through all the way because it's ridiculously expensive and you're wasting a shit ton of money. And so you turn it off and you say CBO doesn't work. So anyway, that's number one, is that the CBO needs to be built around a single sales pitch. Single product, single creative concept. It needs to be unified. All of the data inside of that campaign should reinforce success for whatever it is that you're running in that campaign. Bottom line. So diversify your creatives in different ad sets, but centralize each similar concept in each campaign, right? So when you find a winner, you rally behind the winner and then you move on. So that's number one. Number two, you don't have to be worried nearly as much about audience overlap as we used to be, especially in prospecting. In retargeting you do, and you should definitely set that trend. But instead of prospecting, you need to be testing against 1% lookalikes, because that should be your highest quality audience. Interest groups are great, but in general, your creative should win against the 1%. And if it does, your next audience for that creative should be at 2%, and then everybody. Because by that time, when you've won on the 1%, then when you scale to a 2%, it should be, one, scaling your budget against a slightly less qualified audience, but still very strong. And then you go for broad, which is literally you just type in age, group, and gender, if you want to. And what you're looking for as an advertiser is a creative that'll work against broad. You want something that'll work to everybody, because there's a limit to how much you can scale. A lot of times I see people with a lot of different interest groups and exclusions and really fancy targeting that's got a bunch of different pieces in it. What happens is, when you take an audience of millions of people and then you narrow it down to a couple dozen here and a couple dozen there and a couple dozen over here, maybe 10,000 here or 100,000 here, and you exclude people from it, you're trying to sell people that are very highly qualified. The problem is maybe only 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000 people will be interested in buying your product. So if you say 1 in 1,000 out of 100,000 people, there's only 100 sales that can be made against that audience. Now, if you say 1 in 1,000 against an audience of 20 million or 100 million, you've got the ability to spend more. And really what you want to be able to do is spend more inside of very large audiences, because as the campaign matures, your CPA and your ROAS will flatten out. They'll basically be roughly the same every day. Some days it'll be bad, some days it'll be good, but in general, it'll basically be about the same. Week over week, you're going to be able to project, what is my CPA likely to be next week? And yes, when you spend up a little bit that week, your CPA will probably go up too, a little bit. Hopefully, you get a bit more sales for a bit cheaper, and it's worthwhile downstream. But right now, we've got a 1% lookalike, a 2% lookalike, and a broad. Outside of that is where the bucket-based CBO stuff that I'm developing with Facebook really comes into handy. This is where you really, really apply it. As you begin to scale, you begin to start pushing. Once these work and you get these to ramp up, your incremental spend. So for the purpose of like simple math today, let's say it's $100 you're spending, and you're using mins and maxes against these. We'll get to that. So, but say it's $100 you're spending here. Actually, let's get to the mins and maxes right away. So when I'm testing these audiences, remember we tested the homework at $20 and $30, right? And then if we find a winner, we can start to ramp up. So that 20, now we raise our minimum to 30 and our max to 45. Say that works, we can raise our minimum to like 50 and our max to 75. If you can start to ramp that up. Say we only have that $100. If you've got 50 of it at that 1% lookalike, and it's strong, then you can start spending $20 at another 2% and $20 against broad, and maybe one of those starts to take off so it can start to scale. And because you have a couple places, this was a testing budget of 100, you can start to steal money from other campaigns that aren't as strong and start to feed it in, where you're raising your minimums, and then you're raising your maximum to be 50% more than your minimum, and then you're raising your CBO campaign level budget to be 20% more than the budget, than the minimum spend limits of all of your active campaigns or all active ad sets. Now, one glitch you run into here is if you have inactive ad sets, set their minimum and maximum, erase those limitations. Sometimes Facebook is real buggy about that. I've found that sometimes you just set it to a penny and it's okay. I've talked to them about their team. They don't have their shit together. So you're just going to have to do that. So as you scale those up, where we used to spend maybe 10% of our budget creative testing, we can now spend maybe 10% of our budget on audience testing. So say we've gotten this audience from this campaign from 100 on creative testing to now it's 100 successful that we want to scale. Scaling inside of CBO. So now we're raising our minimums. You can set your minimum basically to where your maximum used to be. Set your new maximum to 50% more than that, and raise your overall campaign budget to be 20% more than the sum total of your minimums. Now, I know it's a little tricky, so I'll try to say it one more time. Step one, you can set your minimum, you can raise your minimum to where your maximum used to be, give or take. So say your minimum was 20 and your maximum was 30. You can set your new minimum tomorrow at 30 and your maximum at 45. When I've talked to their engineering team, there's nothing inside the ad set level minimum and maximum that fucks with the algorithm. Because it's at a campaign level, we don't want to adjust a campaign budget more than 20%, 20 to 30%. So the 20% rule still applies, but it's at the campaign level now. So when you're raising your budgets of each individual ad set, and you're turning some ad sets off, you're turning out some on, the net effect is the overall maximum campaign budget doesn't change that much. And if you're raising your budget and you're spending more day over day and the CPMs stay about the same, then you can be more aggressive. You can go up to 50%, sometimes doubling your CBO budget. What you'll see when you're doing this is keep an eye on your CPMs. If they start to rise, then you know that you're hitting a limitation inside of that audience. So we've got a 1% lookalike. We've got a 2% lookalike, and we've got the broad. So say we've got this thing up to $200 and you're spending $100 of it. Say you're spending $100 of it on the 1% lookalike. And maybe for the purpose of this conversation, now you've got $20 on a 2% and $20 on a broad. $20 minimum, $30 maximum. And you're seeing success there. What you can do is start to raise up that 2% in the broad. Where you go beyond that is now you can start to take 10% of your overall budget and test new audiences. What do? I would take a look at your placement. So one easy way here is to choose Instagram only if you're not getting spend there, because that's incremental reach. Say your Facebook campaign is, say that Facebook ad set, that 1% is spending 80% in Facebook and nowhere else. You have an opportunity to test, if I force it to only Instagram, will that hit my goal CPA or ROAS? If you can, then that's great. If not, turn it off. Other areas where you can go is after the 2% lookalike, try a 10. Get super big. And really, you don't want to expand a lot but anywhere you can is really good. As long as you've got cores, as long as you have core ad sets that are spending a vast majority of your budget. So if you've got the 1% sending like 50% of your budget, and then you're scaling the 2% and the broad, those are ramping up, you can test other audiences. Now, the real fucking value of the bucket-based CBO, the real strength that comes from this is audience identification. So inside of your bucket-based CBO campaign, when you're running all these lookalike, you're running 1%, 2%, maybe a 10% in broad, and you've done some Instagram stuff, you've got like 4 or 5 ad sets in there, and they're all kind of stable, and you've been able to scale them to the point where, like, I know I can spend X amount here, and I know I can spend X amount here, but across my entire account, the dollar I spend here is better than the dollar I spend somewhere else in prospecting, and I know that what my share of spend should be for prospecting versus retargeting, all that fancy shit, which is really fucking easy. You should look at the previous lives. We go over all of it. That's what the Scrum Doc is for. Talk to me, do this homework, I'll walk you through it for half price. At this point, you can start to get into your interest groups, right? Now, we said before, interest groups aren't really that valuable. They're really big, they're really broad. Sometimes they can really narrow things down. What it can do is it can help you identify the gaps in your creative. So if you start to build out interest groups around the people that you think are likely to respond well to this creative, then you can go from there. So say it's, sorry, I've been on tour. I'm exhausted. So say it's creative built around family, and it's creative built around a mom and her experience, right? So you start to target interest groups around that, or it's a military boot, or it's Bluetooth speakers or gear for a festival, whatever. It's not only the product you're selling, but it's the person that's most likely to respond to that individual ad, because now we've segmented this entire campaign down to one type of ad, one sales pitch. The campaign is now actually a campaign in the old advertising sense of the word. So when you find ad sets, when you start to introduce interest groups, again, at that really low budget level, the ones that work are good for you. The ones that don't work, you can start to identify, these are customers I want to reach, but this creative doesn't speak well to them. You're then able to go and give creative direction and say, I need creative that is going to work against this audience, right? So then I've done this a lot where I can say, well, this creative really works against these few interest groups. And yes, it's scaling at 1%, it's scaling at 2%, it's working at broad. We've hit some stability. We've risen from $100 a day to $1,000 a day. We're spending some money here to do some audience identification with it. And we're able to see, it works against X, Y, and Z, but it doesn't work against 1, 2, and 3. We want to win against 1, 2, and 3 because we already have a sales pitch that works for the masses as well as this piece. Now, when it works against the masses, really it's saying this is a giant pool of millions of people willing to spend it, but Facebook is identifying, because it's all inside of one campaign and because it's all basically the same creative running everywhere, Facebook is going to identify out of that 2 million, 20 million, 100 million, 200 million people, the folks that respond best when you're running it at a small budget at 1%. It's going to try to find those people in the larger audiences, which is why you can scale, because you're building all of your data around that ad on a 1% lookalike, which is the highest qualified audience. And that's what's called waterfalling out to other audiences and allows them to succeed. That broad targeting will work much, much better if it only has the ads in it that worked at 1%, and that 1% was running first, and the 1% was stable and scaled. Then that broad is going to work really well, because it's incremental on top of the 1%. Now, if you've identified in the interest groups, oh, here's some other audiences that I need to make creative for, what you'll find is those audiences can also run in the 1% and the 2% in broad. But because they have a different sales pitch, because a different type of person responds to it, you're going to reach completely different people inside of those lookalike audiences and inside those broad audiences. And I've seen this with one guy that's got this tooth whitening kit, and I was talking with him about it, and he's at all the conferences and shit. We were talking about the strategy, and for him where it would work is, hey Mac, hey Andrew, how you doing, buddy? What we were talking about there was he's got influencer endorsers from radio personalities to rodeo people to models and fashion folks. But for him, using this strategy, the kind of person that responds to the rodeo star is very different than the person that responds to the fashion person, right? And very different maybe than the person that responds to the radio and the television. You're using your creative as a way of divvying up that giant audience instead of using targeting to try to force people into the 10 different ads that you have. So you're letting Facebook use a few ads to segment the large audience purely on the machine learning. And if you have multiple types of creative running in side-by-side campaigns, then you're going to be reaching different segments of those very large audiences, but that lookalike 1%, that lookalike 2%, the broad, if it works, those are audiences that you will have no problem scaling into because they're extraordinarily large. And because they're extraordinarily large, the results will be stable. Once they're stabilized, you'll be able to see this is what my target CPA will be. This is what my target ROAS will be. So in effect, what you're doing is we've identified a single creative that we like. We've set our mins and our maxes to control spend to test which one we want to run with. We found a winner. Now we are using these spend thresholds, both a min and a max, at the ad set level to control where the campaign budget at the campaign level is spending its resources. And we're funneling the majority of that money to a 1% lookalike, and then also to 2% and to broad. We're building up the performance of the campaign so that those are where we're scaling our audiences, right? They're going from $20 minimums, or $100 minimums, or $200. Like they're ramping up. We've set our maximum to 50% more than our minimum. And we've set our entire campaign budget to 20% more than the net total of all of the minimums of active ad sets within that campaign. And if an ad set has been turned off, we set its min and max budget to like a penny. And because all of these campaigns are built around a single sales pitch or a single creative concept, which can have a couple iterations, but in general, this is the concept we're testing. Because of that, results can be projected and can be stable, and the learnings can be shared between all of the ad sets inside of that campaign. So the success you see at the 1% helps the broad win. And when you scale that up enough, now instead of needing to test creatives, you can test interest groups and whatnot, and other audiences, maybe Instagram only placements, stuff like that. You can test those to start to do audience identification to see where the gaps in this sales pitch are. Identify who the people are that won't buy from your ad. And you can create new ads to try to sell those people. Because when you sell those people, that is incremental success, which means that you're starting to find you have something that works against millions of folks, great, but there's some folks it doesn't work on. So now you're trying to use creative to solve that piece. Whereas before, you were throwing all your creative into one and being like, oh, that audience doesn't work, move on. That audience doesn't work, move on. And it wasn't that audience didn't work, it was that you didn't have the right creative for that audience. So now you're building creative specifically to turn that audience on, and you can pay for the testing because you have this more stable core unit of spend built around the 1% lookalike and the 2 and the broad, etc. That is how you use CBO at a prospecting level. Now, I think last week I went into how to use it on retargeting, so I'm not going to get too much into that because my head hurts and I need coffee, and I've been on tour and stuff, but that's the fundamental way of best practice for CBO. Now, also, if you do this right, you can do it on auto bid. You don't need manual bid. You want to scale this with auto placement, and auto bid against 3 or 4 different audiences, and then use the rest of it to build out, to identify who the audience bucket is that responds well to this creative. So at a business objective level, you can say, this is where I'm winning, this is where I'm losing. It's not, well, this lookalike doesn't work, let me try this lookalike. Because the honest truth is, that's bullshit. The honest truth is 1% lookalike of previous buyers will work. If that doesn't work, then the creative isn't good. If you have other things that are working, it's because it got lucky early on. And hey, look, you can build on luck, which is great, but it's not stable and it's not scalable. And one of the reasons your campaigns aren't stable and they're not scalable and you're struggling is because you're not building around the lowest hanging fruit and building up. I always say, start from the bottom, build up. 1% is at the very bottom of a prospecting audience. That is the smallest, most qualified audience. Think of a lookalike 1% as your add to cart one day, right? That is the lowest hanging fruit. If it doesn't work there, it won't work anywhere. And if it does work there, and you've got 1 or 2 lookalikes in there, and that audience is a couple million people, you should be able to take your spend into the hundreds of dollars a day, if not the thousands, if your creative is good enough. And all that really is doing is ramping up the audience pool for your retargeting, because your retargeting is where you're going to make your profit. The prospecting is where you get, basically, you try to make a little bit of money, but you're just trying to get people in the door. And it allows your retargeting to be more efficient and with larger pools, and so you can spend as much money as possible in retargeting. Because there, if your prospecting comes in at a 1.1 or 1.3, but your retargeting comes in at a 1.5 or a 2, every dollar you spend in retargeting makes your business better. How do you spend more money in retargeting? You ramp up your prospecting spend. And then you do the balance between those two. And that was last week's homework. So really, if you want to understand that piece, go look at last week's live, follow the homework there. If you do that, you can qualify for, I guess, a half off to the Slack or a half off one-on-one with me. So I'll walk you through the rest of it and show you any of the ebooks and give you the resources too. So at that point, you are now solving big business problems. You are now letting Facebook do the work where you're changing the budget a couple times a week. You're turning off ad sets or ads a couple times a week. You are not in Facebook all the time. I run this for one thing where I'll spend 7 figures on Facebook a month, right? DR needs to make money. Dollar for dollar is unacceptable. I have to drive profit. And I'm maybe running a dozen or more campaigns. And each campaign is built around this kind of stuff, like retargeting, retention, and prospecting, and all of that stuff. I only spend a couple hours a day max inside of Facebook. And we had to completely rebuild that piece a while ago, and we were able to turn it around in 3 or 4 days. We were able to turn around the entire account from scratch all the way up and began scaling it back up again, and we're able to make it work. And you can do that too. I'm about to do it again this week with somebody else. Well, that's the goal. But we're going to test, identify these pieces, find the winners, ramp up the winners, and make sure that the retargeting encompasses as much of the spend as possible. In this case, right? Because it's DR. And that's where your profit is. So a lot of the times, I've seen this in two live calls I've had. One was a one-on-one, one was a potential sales thing, and a lot of other stuff. What I've been finding more and more is using CBO to drive the lowest CPA, the lowest cost per acquisition, the lowest cost per sale in prospecting as possible, rallying behind a limited number of offers and driving the lowest price possible, and then using retargeting to try to drive the highest return on ad spend possible, and then shifting as many dollars to that high ROAS as I possibly can. So I'm basically using prospecting to drive site traffic. Where you used to look at CPCs, cost per clicks, now I'm looking at cost per acquisition. Because I don't just care about clicks, I want buyers, right? So it's how much does it cost for me to get buyers? I want as many buyers for as cheap as possible. If I don't make a profit on them, that's fine. I want as many buyers for as cheap as possible, as long as I'm breaking even. Everybody that doesn't buy right away, I'm going to convert really, really easily with my retargeting. I'm going to make a shit ton of money on that. And the way I ramp up how much money I make is by throwing in more people from prospecting. So anyway, that is, in summation, basically, how we identify our winning creative, how we set up creative testing to isolate our winning creative, how we ramp up testing on our winning creative from those tests, how we build dedicated prospecting campaigns that are stable and scalable and measurable and projectable and can rally the entire account. How we can take those tests and ramp them up. We've also talked about the way then that we can use that success to do audience identification through bucket-based CBO and start to see where my opportunities are for new creative, where my gaps are, who's coming into my store that isn't buying, and what sales pitch do I need in order to convert those people. Because that's where you get incrementality. That's where you get more and more spend. That's where you get more opportunities to make profit with new buyers. We've also talked about how that interplays with your retargeting so that you can understand at a higher level what you're doing in prospecting and how it affects the bottom line of your account, how it affects the bottom line of your business. And then how you can use one to scale the other, and how you can adjust your media mix so that you can maximize your profits and what those goals should be at each level. Yeah, so I got a couple questions here, and then I'm gonna sign off because boy howdy, I am whooped. I think I'm gonna, should I just go get ice cream and coffee and then come home and watch a movie and take a nap and then clean up my car and then go on more rock and roll? We'll see what happens. We'll see. Oh, by the way, I've been seeing a lot of success. I really wanted to say that it's been awesome to see how many people are winning with Tapjoy and with Clickly. And if anybody has any other resources like that, these commission-only DR stuff, let me know, because I'm going to take advantage of as much of it as I can. Also, spoiler alert, free Chipotle delivery today. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna order some fucking burrito and watch a fucking movie. This is gonna be great. The Burbs are Big Trouble in Little China. Ooh, okay. Anyway, Andrew, let's get to your question. You've been saying, I've noticed broad DPA has been performing poorly for the last like 10 days for ecom clients. Lead gen is still good. Andrew, what I can say is internally at Facebook, I was joking with some of their engineers and some of their account directors and some whoop-de-doo high ups. DABA, as we called it, broad audience DPAs, is basically, they're getting away from it. They're still suggesting that you use it, but more and more of the team members are being pulled from that into going to CBO. So if you want to look at what should I throw my weight behind as an advertiser, I would say, where are the best and brightest Facebook employees working? They're all working inside of CBO. So it looks like DABA, I mean, if you can make it work for you, great. But I would say your trends, you're holding on to something that's still working, but you should start to work on something else. Which sucks, but it just didn't work the way that they wanted to, and CBO is kind of taking the resources because everybody has to be on CBO by September. So you're just not getting the bugs fixed. You're not getting updates on machine learning. They're not updating it to keep up with everything else that Facebook is doing. So it will only stay the same or get worse, basically, moving forward, which is unfortunate. You'll probably see some spikes as more and more advertisers get out of it. You'll be one of fewer and fewer people in it. So you'll get, in supply and demand speak, you'll get better and better options at that in that auction. And there might be a balance there where it makes sense for you to still be there. But inside Dope, a lot of programmers and heavy thinkers and strategists, entire teams that used to be building DABA are now building CBO. So, look to the money, right? And you'll see who will benefit or something along those lines. I misquoted the Big Lebowski's misquote of Lenin. Anyway, there you go. Let's see. Andrew says, I looked into Clickly. I wanted to schedule a demo and wasn't really too explanatory on their website. Andrew, DM me, and I'm getting on the phone with them this week. I will make an email introduction for you, if I can, or I will give them your information so they can reach out to you. If anybody else wants to get in on that, DM me, and I will personally make an introduction with somebody there to get you onboarded. 100%. Don't let. It's a new company. They're not the best at customer service. They're nerds that know how to make money on the internet. Talking to people isn't what they're best at. So let me help you. Also, Andrew says, I've been working on CBO campaign simplification. Now, with ultra segmented audiences, testing 2 ad creatives, video, and graphics. So, simplification with ultra segmented audience testing. Oh, so you're testing. I guess I don't quite understand. That sounds really cool. I'm a little suspicious about the ultra segmented piece. I would go with a very non-segmented piece. All your creative testing should go against the exact same audience. You want to win against that 1% lookalike. And if you can win there and then also at a 2% and abroad, then build an entire campaign around it. If it doesn't work at 2% abroad, then it's probably not the thing to rally behind, but it's probably better than the thing that's losing, so you can keep it in the mix. But it's got to stand on its own at that level. But I love the idea here of you using two creatives, a video and a graphic. That's exactly what I'm talking about. As long as they are built around the same concept, then you're doing great. And just keep running those until like, oh, hey, this one's winning. Oh, I can dump more money into it. Oh, I can dump more money into it. And yeah, and I can dump more money into it, and I can begin doing different audiences. And that's beginning to work. So you can build an entire campaign. That's great. Andrew says, just what I've been fed from my rep, reduce overlap. I absolutely agree that you should reduce overlap. What I would tell your rep, if I was in a room with your rep and pushing back, would say, I understand about audience overlap. Tell me, and they can give you this information, tell me based on my daily spend, what is my share of voice inside of this audience? And knowing that I'm running different types of creative that are going to be responded to differently by different people, are you sure that I need to avoid spending money against this audience with multiple pieces of creative because I'm spending so much that I'm reaching the same person so many times that I'm losing efficiency? If you've got sales pitch 1, 2, and 3, all spending $100 a day against an audience that's 2 million people, your share of voice inside of that audience is so small that the overlap doesn't matter. And I would also tell them that you're not concerned about audience overlap. What you're most concerned about is finding a piece of creative that you can scale to the fucking moon. Tell her or him you're going to have a conversation about overlap when they tell you your share of voice in that audience is affecting your CPMs. I would go back, literally take that piece and just send it back to them. Overwhelm them with your ability to know more than they do about what's going on. You'll get a better rep. And now your rep is doing very well for you by giving you this information, but you need to push back. And I would say, like, but I have friends that are using bucket-based CBO for iterative creative testing that are inside the disruptors group. And they're telling me that this is how I should do it. That's going to shake a fucking cage. All right. We've been on here for a little over an hour. I love you guys. If you enjoyed this, please invite a friend and share everything that we talk about everywhere. You can copy and paste the sexy tips and the ethos stuff and the tactics and all that. Copy and paste what works for you into any other group. If you feel like giving me credit, I'd really fucking appreciate it. But just let's share this stuff. Let's all fucking win. And if I get credit for it, great. If I don't get credit for it, hey, I'm winning on so many levels right now, I don't need it. If you give me credit for it, we can all help win, but whatever. I don't need my ego fed by that. But I do appreciate getting credit for my ideas, right? Who doesn't? So anyway, Wishpond, I'm going to click on this link right now, and I will look into it later today. Let's see. It's coming up. A platform designed for growth. Ooh. All right. Well, I'll take a look at it. Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you very much, the entire group. I love you guys. Hopefully this is worth it for you. And we'll keep going into this shit every week if we need to. Do the fucking homework. Get into the Slack or get into the one-on-ones. Let's go make some fucking money this week, people. It's Mother's Day. Buy your mother some fucking flowers. Right now. Do it right now. See you later. Wait, no. It's Memorial Day. I'll buy her some flowers fucking anyway. See you later.